Hi everyone. Lots of folks want to know more about my co-host here. I tell this story not to glorify or exalt myself, but to encourage anyone who's considering getting a pet to think a little beyond the obvious. You never know what kinds of treasures you can find outside the box. It started with this little guy. His name was Morpheus, and for years he was my daughter's lord and master. In his later years, he was also an insulin-dependent diabetic. She got a job that was going to take her out of town overnight on a regular basis, and she knew he couldn't miss his insulin. I offered to take him in and keep him here in the studio and give him his injections, and I did. I got attached to him immediately, but the change was too much for him and he died not long after. Suddenly, this place seemed awfully empty. Both my other daughters were volunteers at our local Humane Society at the time, so we went there first. I realized I liked having an animal that needed me, and I had already decided I wanted an older cat who would be fairly calm. So when they asked what kind of cat I had in mind, I said, "Show me the ones that nobody else wants." One reason nobody wanted Hazel is because she came with a medical waiver. You can see why. I don't know anything about her history. She was brought in as a stray. Our speculation is a car clipped her, but we can never know for sure. What we do know is she has a big arthritis knob here in her right knee and a more problematic one here at the base of her spine. This one seems to be impinging on some nerves because she has pronounced weakness in her hind legs. She was just getting over a respiratory infection and she's allergic to fleas. To top it all off, she was 12 years old. They could tell that by her teeth. When I asked how that works, I could see the answer go, "Eeeem." I said, if she's the right one for me, I'm fine with all that. My wife, my two other daughters, and I waited in a room while they brought her in. At first she crouched under a chair, but I gently pulled her out and sat down with her. She melted into my lap. After a few minutes of bliss, for me, I assume for her too, but she doesn't say much, I set her down so she could go meet the others. Because of that weakness in her hind legs, she can't jump. So when she wanted to get up onto one of the chairs or anything else, she had to reach up with her front claws and grab on, then sort of scramble with one hind leg and ultimately kind of oof the other one up. It looked so horribly painful I thought I might cry. I already knew she was the one, so I said, "We're stopping at a pet store on the way home and getting her some steps." My wife just smiled and held out her phone. She was already looking up where to get them. If you've seen a video where she leaves or comes back, you've seen her using them. She was so calm and quiet and cuddly, we didn't have to look at any others. They were having a deal where they waived the adoption fee if you got an older pet. I think I signed everything but the Mayflower Compact before we were done. Yes, I assume responsibility for her medical care. No, I won't bring her back as defective. No, I won't dump her by the side of the road. There's a special place in you-know-where for people who do that. No, I won't sell her to a restaurant. OMG, I love this cat already. Just let me take her home. We hadn't even seen the blurb on her, but when I read it, I just laughed. They described her as a professional lap cat. Initially, this chair that she's commandeered wasn't in here. The steps led to me so she could come onto my lap anytime she wanted. Then one day I had some people over to jam and brought the chair in for them. The instant they left, Hazel battled her way up onto the chair, looked up at me and said, "Mine." You may have noticed that ever since then, she doesn't lay on my lap anymore. I have a theory about that. There's no way to know what kind of family she lived with before or how long she was on the street, but I think she turned into a professional lap cat because she was searching for her human. My idea is that she tried to cling to any lap she could find in hopes that one would finally be her caretaker and protector. I figure once she was sure she had found her willing servant, she decided she didn't need to be desperate anymore. As we were leaving the Humane Society, one of the folks thanked me for doing this. I said, "I'm not just doing it for her, I'm doing it for me. I don't know how much time she has left, but I intend to make sure it's comfortable, happy, and she knows she's loved." When she realized she had found her home, she settled in and developed her own unique nest, so to speak. We discovered that the one big requirement is it has to be close to me. She likes to be able to see me when she wakes up, and she likes being within reach so I can do this. It took me longer than it should have to come up with the idea of having her in the videos. Now that we're doing that, it seems pretty natural to have her here beside me, but on camera. If you watched some of last year's videos, I had the camera positioned differently. She was there, but she wasn't visible. But people started asking about her, and usually you only have to slap me 2 or 3 times to get the idea across. As you might expect, it isn't all fun and games. We have to do regular doctor visits, and this last time I discovered that she has an overactive thyroid. I took her in because I was concerned that her eating habits had changed. Hyperthyroid can do that in a cat, and we already knew that because my wife's cat Snickle Fritz has the same condition, and we found it the same way. So they each get a half a pill twice a day. Figuring out how to give it to Hazel wasn't easy. My wife just crushes the pill up and puts it in her cat's food. Hazel was regularly leaving her food and refusing to eat it until I finally had to give it to the dog. The dog doesn't need any thyroid medication that we know of. So I got some of those little pill pockets. Apparently a whole one was too big for her royal tiny highness. She'd push it around her chair for a while and then most likely lay on it. I started using half a pill pocket, and so far she's lived happily ever after. One curious thing about her purr is absolutely silent. The only way you can tell she's doing it is to gently feel the underside of her neck where it's happening. The rumble is there, it just stays there. Something about her that constantly concerns me, especially considering her arthritis. I find myself wondering if she's in pain. If you've ever had a cat, you know they won't tell you. They'll take their cue from those so-called macho dudes who will accidentally drive a 16-penny nail through their left nostril and then refuse to go to the doctor because it would be unmanly. I know the arthritis I have is not very pleasant, and I live on a kind of a cocktail of medication to keep the pain under control. I worry that my kitty is hurting. She doesn't act like it, and she doesn't especially favor any body part that I can see, but just in case, when I can get her to eat it, I give her a healthy dose of CBD oil twice a day to keep whatever pain might be there from cutting into her comfort. I've had her for close to 2 years now, and she isn't showing any signs of degradation. She was a little overweight, so I regulate her food, and she's dropped several ounces since I've had her. Our life has settled into a daily pattern, and greeting her is one of my favorite things in the morning. And fair warning, I'm going to tug on your heartstrings right now. If you've ever considered becoming a patron, this is a good time. Her medical checkups and the rest do add up. If you're interested in helping defray some of that, you'd be amazed how far $2 or $5 a month goes. That's as much of that stuff as I'm physically capable of doing, and my stomach was acting a little jumbly while I was doing it. Back to the kitty. What else can I tell you? Oh yes, although she does get regular flea treatments, she isn't really exposed to them out here. She's the only animal in the place, and the others aren't allowed in. But since she does have that allergy where one bite can cause a welt the size of my thumbnail, we take all the precautions we know how. So that's the story. If you have any questions, feel free to ask in the comments. Thank you for watching and for being so interested in this wonderful, silly kitty. Do you have anything to add before we go? Hello? You have anything to add? You heard it here first, folks. Hazel was regularly leaving her food and refusing to eat it until I finally had to give it to the dog. Hey, you're the star of this show. Where are you going?